Well, using again the definition of faith that they use, that if you don't have reason, you have faith. I think the atheists have to have a lot of faith because there's very little reason to believe that atheism is true.
Frank, let me open up with the question that I know you're well prepared to answer. So Frank, why don't you have enough faith to be an atheist?
Well, because there's a lot of evidence that God exists, and we're using this word faith the way the atheists use it, not the way Christians use it. Faith to the atheist means if you don't have any evidence, you just have faith. And I think atheists have very little evidence that their materialistic worldview is true. And there's a lot of evidence that the Christian worldview is true. Now, the true definition of faith is trusting in what you have good reason to believe. Trusting in what you have good reason to believe. And so I think there's a lot of evidence that Christianity is true. So it's easy to trust in the fact that God exists and Jesus rose from the dead and Christianity is true.
So when you use the phrase that it requires faith to be an atheist, I've seen several of your debates with Christopher Hitchens and so forth. They typically bristle at this comment, say atheism doesn't require faith, it just requires reason. And I love how you respond to this. So how do you respond when people say it does not require faith to be an atheist?
Well, using again the definition of faith that they use, that if you don't have reason, you have faith. I think the atheists have to have a lot of faith because there's very little reason to believe that atheism is true. And they'll say, well, atheism isn't really a worldview. And I say, no, it is a worldview. You believe, for example, that this is the view of most atheists today, that everything's made of molecules, that we're just molecular machines, that we're just moist robots. Well, if we're moist robots, Shay, and every thought we have is the result of the laws of physics, which means we don't have free will, we don't have really moral accountability because we're not really making free will moral choices. We're just reacting based on the chemistry of our minds. If that's really the case, then we don't have any moral accountability, and we shouldn't even believe what we believe because we're not reasoning to conclusions, Shay. We are reacting to conclusions. We're not following the evidence where it leads. We are simply compelled to believe what we believe because physics tells us to do so. And so, ironically, atheists who claim to be champions of reason have made reason impossible by their ideology of materialism. So I think that takes a lot of faith to believe that everything you think is just the result of the laws of physics. And you have no warrant to believe it then if it is just a result of the laws of physics, because again, you're not reasoning freely to that conclusion. You've just reacted to that conclusion without your consent.